webinar. This one follows directly on from the last one, which was the interview and the complaint analysis, and it forms part of the entire investigation process. Now, if you didn't see the last one, there is a link to the video, and I'm videoing this one as well, so it'll be available for video. And as I mentioned last time, and the same with this time, this is my process that I use in investigations. I've used this process for probably about the last 10 years. On average, in a busy time, I might be conducting 4 or 5 investigations a week. In a quiet time, 1 or 2. So I am using this this planning tool that I've sort of developed. I'm using it all the time. This seminar, or this webinar, I guess gives you a bit of a snippet of the investigation planning process. By no means, you know, it's everything to do with it, but it's as much as I can cram into 45 minutes. What I would suggest is, if this area interests you, if you want to learn more about this, book into one of my investigation courses. At the end of this webinar, once I've got it up on YouTube and on my website, I'll send you a link to it. And I'll also send you some other materials that I'll talk about during the course of this webinar. And I'll send you details of the investigation courses. In the past, face-to-face, I've run them over 1 day or 2 days. Now, because of Zoom, nobody likes to sit in front of a computer all day. So I've actually broken them down into half-day sessions. So the 1 day course is 2 half-day sessions, 3.5 hours each, and the 2 day course is 4. The difference between the two is the 2 day course provides more practice on interviewing and planning and analysis and all that sort of stuff. So what you do in the course actually is you work through an investigation. It's a real investigation that I did. It's a sexual harassment and bullying investigation. You receive the complaints, you analyse the complaints like we did last week. You plan your interviews, as we're going to do today. You then conduct the interviews with myself and my colleague. She plays the role of the victim and some witnesses. I play a couple of witnesses. I also play the respondent. And we are playing them exactly as the real live people were. So you get a real taste for the investigation process. And it's a great learning experience. I mean, if you go to my website and have a look at the testimonials, I get a lot of testimonials from people who've done it, and they really enjoy it. It's a vastly different type of role play than what normally happens. And a few years ago, when I mentioned the word role play, I'd get sort of groan. But this is quite challenging. It's interesting. And at the end of all the interviews, we then have kind of like a star chamber thing where you've got to convince me that you've actually ascertained enough evidence from your interviews to substantiate your allegations. And so if I've got a group of 5 or 6 people, everybody interviews someone. And occasionally we run these courses for one person where they have to conduct a number of interviews. So look, it's all good fun. And if it's something that interests you, please, by all means, I'll send you out the details and you can contact. And we've got a number of courses running in September. Okay, so on to today's topic. A little bit about me. If you weren't here last week, that's about me. It will pop up again in the recording. Qualified lawyer and workplace investigator. So I don't practice law anymore by choice. I prefer the investigation training area. Okay, so complaint analysis. Now, we looked at this last week. If you weren't here last week, basically what I've said is the analysis of the complaint is the start point of the investigation. The next stage would be your investigation plan, which I deal with in the courses. It's a little bit hands-on to be sort of trying to do in a webinar. And then we move on to the planning of your interview with the complainant. Now, as I said last week, it's vitally important that you really understand the details of within the complaint, what's behind the complaint before you continue the investigation. And the next one I'll do, probably next week, I'll talk about how to conduct interviews. That will be, again, a bit of an overview because you really don't get a taste for it until you're actually doing it. But that's okay. So the rest of your investigation is going to be dependent on the information you get during the complainant interview. I follow the same process can be followed for witnesses. The same process can be followed for the respondent. Okay, so the process is basically the same. But without a detailed complainant interview, evidence can be missed, evidence can be misinterpreted, and that can derail the rest of your investigation. Because, as I said last week, so much flows from the analysis of the complaint, but then just as much flows from the complainant interview. So you're drafting of allegations. Now, it's very, very important during your complainant interview that, like I said, you really get to the essence of what they're saying, and don't make any assumptions, don't make anything up, don't interpret things. The classic one is if someone says, my co-worker swore at me, I will say to them, what did the person say? And they'll say, oh, they said the F word. Now, there's a general consensus as to what the F word means, but I have to say to people, and I've said it to lots of people, and one lady, for example, I said, can you tell me what you meant by the F word? And she said, oh, no, I can't say it. I said, would you mind if I say it? And she said, oh, I'd rather you didn't. I said, can I write it? And she said, okay. So I wrote what we normally consider to be F word, and she said, yes, that was the word. Now, if it hadn't been the word, for example, some people might say the F word is frigging, and I had used the general term F word, and I'd put that in an allegation to the respondent, and I wouldn't put F word, I'd have to write the word out. And the respondent says, no, I didn't say that. But I've got other people who've also said, yeah, he definitely said the F word. I substantiate that, I'm going to be found wrong. You know, simple fact is he didn't say the F word, he said friggin'. So that's one of those things that you can't leave that stone unturned. And when we go into the planning of the interview, I'll show you the process that I use. So drafting allegations, conducting the interviews with respondents, evidence analysis, you've got to have it right, report writing. So you must, to substantiate an allegation in a workplace investigation, it must rely on the evidence, okay? So, simple process, as I mentioned last week. One, this is my process. You don't have to do this. I print out the complaint. I like to have the complaint on paper. I use my highlight pen to highlight what I need to clarify. I then place a number, and the number is on my interview script, what I call my interview script. And I'm going to send you, after this, I'm going to send you the interview script that I'm going to talk about today. So you actually have a copy so you can see how it goes. I'll also send you the letter that I send to the complainant, because I'm going to be referring to that as we go along. So that's basically what I'm going to do. Now, at the start of my interview, I'm going to have what I term preamble questions. I'll talk about the interviewing process next week, and I'll talk about how, you know, that at the start you have a bit of a chat, you build rapport and all that sort of stuff. But today we're talking about planning the interview. So preamble questions, they're designed to provide information to the interviewee that they should be advised of or they might want to know. They ensure procedural fairness. They ensure compliance, and they cover yourself in case questions are raised about the compliance of your interview. Now, I read an article this morning that the head lawyer from Morris Blackburn is criticising the investigation in the AMP investigation. And he made a number of comments about workplace investigators, the fact that the industry is unregulated. It is. That there is very little checks on compliance. There isn't. Workplace investigators are supposed to be licensed. I personally hold what's called a master license, but there's an awful lot of people out there conducting workplace investigations who are not licensed. So they'd be in breach of the Private Investigators Act. They could potentially have action taken against them by the New South Wales Police, the Security Licensing Enforcement Directorate is what it's called. So it's important in your preamble questions that you cover off on a lot of, I guess, legal points. So just to let you know, I audio record all my interviews, and I use the trusty iPhone. Someone this morning asked, can you record? Yes, you can. You've got to notify everybody who's who's in the recording that you are recording. You don't necessarily need permission, but you have to notify them. Now, different states have different regulations, and what I suggest is if you're not in New South Wales or you're not in Australia, Google recording a conversation on an iPhone or something like that, and you'll get information about your jurisdiction. If you have to take notes, it's the same process. However, what I do is on my script, I would leave some space for notes. Okay, so with the exception of the preamble, I don't write out longhand all my questions. I do tell interviewees that for the benefit of my transcriber, I have an interview script that I'm going to refer to, and that especially during my preamble, to ensure for the benefit of my transcriber, the questions are asked in the same order every time. Okay, so I'm going to open another screen now, and I'm going to show you my preamble. So, Sydney Arbor, he's the complainant. So I've pressed record already by now. So I'll start off with, this is an interview between Phil O'Brien of Australian Workplace Training Investigations and Sydney Arbor. Also present as a support person, if there is a support person. If there is no other person present, I will say there is no other person present. The interview has been conducted as part of an investigation for the company. The interview has been conducted on Thursday, the 31st of July, 2020, in a meeting room at the company office, 15 Street, North Sydney. The time commenced. Okay. Then I'll say to the person, for the purpose of the transcript, please state and spell your name. The reason I do that, and I do that for everybody, is sometimes people have some difficult names. If I get a name which is really difficult to pronounce, I'll actually jump that first question where I've got to say their name if I can't, if I figure I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, so I'll just go straight down. So they spell their name. What's your position at the company? How long have you held that position? Who do you report to? So these are just sort of format questions. Then I'm going to tell them why we're here. In case I get someone later on who says, well, the guy didn't really explain what was going on. Now, this is for complainants, for witnesses, and for respondents. It's all the same. As I told you, I'm conducting investigating complaints that you have made against Graham Brown. Do you understand that? Okay, so I don't type it out longhand. That's, do you understand that? Sometimes I don't even put that on there because I'm so used to doing it. At the conclusion, my investigation report will be prepared and will be provided to the management of the company. So that's letting them know that when I finish my investigation, I'm going to do a report. The interview will be recorded and you'll be provided with a transcript of the interview for your records. Do you understand that? Now, that's the third opportunity they will have to object to the recording. The first one will be in the letter I send to them, and I'm going to send you a copy of the letter, which says, to ensure accurate note-taking, the interview will be audio recorded. The second opportunity will be in our rapport building session when I'll say something like, look, my process is I'm going to record the interview. I'll send you a copy of the transcript. You don't need to do anything with it, but if there's anything you want to add to it, just email me, okay? And then they get, so if they don't object to that, and then later on they say, oh, I didn't want to be interviewed, my argument would be, well, you've had 3 opportunities at this point to object and you didn't, okay? Then we go down to what you say in this interview may be incorporated into the investigation report which is forwarded to the company. What you say in the interview will assist me in making findings and recommendations in that report, and the statements you make may also be used if the matter proceeds to disciplinary action. Do you understand that? The reason for those questions is so they're very clear about the fact that what they tell me, what we talk about in the interview is going in the report. Okay? Are you happy to continue under those conditions? Is the fourth opportunity for them to say, oh, I don't want to be recorded, or, you know, I don't really want to participate in this, okay? So I note your support person is John Smith or John Citizen, or I note that you do not have a support person present. Are you happy to continue without a support person? And if they say, yeah, no problem, and that's what most people say. And occasionally I've said, oh, I'd really like a support person. Can we stop for a minute? Or whatever. So they're entitled to a support person. So if they want a support person, definitely let them have one. In the rapport building section, I will have said to John Citizen, John, do you understand your role as a support person? Yes, I do, or I will explain it to them. But again, for the record and everything being recorded, John, do you understand your role as a support person? Yeah, no problem, okay? If you'd like to take a break at any time or to gather your thoughts or to confer with a support person, please let me know and I'll stop the recording, okay? So generally at that point, they will say, yeah, okay, no worries, I understand that. And look, sometimes if a interview's been going too long, we will take breaks, and I'll talk about that next week in interviewing. But I generally don't go for more than an hour without taking a break. If I see the person getting upset, we'll take a break. If the person says, "Oh, I'd really like to take a break," we'll take a break. There's not a problem with that. And the last one of my preamble questions is: you do not have to answer any of my questions. However, if you choose not to answer some or all of my questions, my report will not be able to represent your account of the events. Do you understand that? So that's basically, it's kind of like their right to silence. They don't have to answer questions if they don't want to, but they need to know that if they don't answer questions, my report's still going ahead and I will still go on with what I've got. You know, so I won't be able to include what they've got to say. So that's my preamble. I kind of look at my preamble as my warm-up. You know, we start off, I'm 7 or 8 questions in, I'm comfortable, I'm flowing, and that's, as I say, that's my warm-up. So the next thing we'll do is we'll look at the markup, what I call the markup of the complaint. So here's the markup. Here is what has been in the complaint, and what you can see that I've done is I've written numbers all over it. So I previously highlighted it, so you saw it last time that I'd highlighted, and now what I've done is I have put numbers there. So my first number 1, I regret having to write to you at this time. Now, if I go back to my interview plan, I have asked a question here: how long have you reported to Graham Smith? I might, at this point, I might even put in there, how do you get along with John Smith? Tell me about your relationship with John Smith. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I might put that in later. And this one, I'll put it in at number 4, okay? Relationships are important. Now, what brought you to make this complaint? That's a nice open question. And Sid is going to talk. He might answer some questions. I'm just looking at a question. What about if you're required to attend the interview to answer questions? Some misconduct policies require attendance. Yeah, look, if the policy says you've got to attend, then you've got to attend. But again, if you try to force someone to answer a question, the likelihood is you won't get very far. But yeah, look, always go with what the policy says. One of the first questions I ask when I do an investigation is, send me your policies, send me your code of conduct. So I'll look at that. So yeah. So look, the interview script can change if there is a compliance requirement in there that you attend and that you ask questions. Okay. So now back to this. What brought you to make the complaint? I use a thing called what's called the PUKE method, which was developed by a couple of English psychologists. Pure, uninterrupted knowledge exchange. So when I ask that question, I let Sid talk. Sid might talk for a minute. Sid might talk for an hour. And I'll let him talk. Now, it's really important that I restate at this point, I don't write out every single question I'm going to ask, and I focus on the answer, not my next question. Because if we go back to my markup, the next thing I want to look at is, until recently, when I've been bullied and harassed by Graham Brown. Now, Sid may answer all of that when I ask him what brought you to make that complaint. So I don't need to ask those questions, okay? What I will need to do is I'll need to dig on what Sid means by bullied and harassed, okay? This is the first time he's mentioned it. It's not specifics, but at this point, I want to know what Sid means. What does he mean by bullied and harassed? And give me some examples. Okay. Again, Graham Smith's been mentioned, so I might ask him about, hey, tell me about Graham. Now, bearing in mind that I've been doing this for a long time, so when I write something like details, I know what's in my mind. If you haven't done a lot of these, you might want to put more in that question on details. And details was in relation to my work. I consider that my work. So I'm going to ask him, what's your work? What do you do? What's a day like for you? What's your responsibilities? I might ask him, what's his KPIs? What's his job description say? I can go into all that, and a lot of it's going to depend on how he responds. Tell me a bit more about what you do. Tell me more. I help people in the organisation. Now, I definitely want to know, who does he help? What does he do? When does he do it? And for example, one that this is kind of semi-based on, the guy was very good at rushing down to the admin office to change a printer ribbon, or to show someone how to convert a Word document into PDF or something like that. But when it came to work on the server, he didn't know what he was doing. So, he really wasn't doing his job, but he could bring along 3 or 4 witnesses who could say, yeah, he's a great bloke. So I want more details of the what, because when I speak to the manager, if it's a complaint against his managers might say, well, I'm performance managing because he just can't, program the server. He can't do all the things we need him to do. And he's given me a list of things that he does do. So, they may be contradictory. Going back to my markup, I've been employed since 2000, whatever. Line managers, George, Andrew, and Jay. So I want to know who George, Andrew, and Jay are. I want to know what their roles were. Did they manage him? How long did they manage him for? Are they still with the organisation? I prefer to interview people who are still with the organisation. I'm not a big fan of interviewing people who've left the organisations, because they can kind of throw a grenade in the room with no comeback. I will, but generally I want to interview people in the organisation. And I want to know what this constant feedback was. What did they say? What sort of feedback did they give him? So give me some examples. Going down to number 9, due to recent restructures. Now, Sid has already talked about recent changes to IT manager. So I might not need to ask him about that. He might have told me about all of that. So I don't need to ask. Now then we come down to number 10 and then number 11. Unreasonable acts exercised by him that constitute bullying. This might seem a little bit simplistic, but realistically, I would ask who he's referring to as him. I've had people change midstream in complaints. Oh no, I'm not talking about that person anymore, I'm talking about someone else. So I want to know details of the actions that Graham, if we're still talking about Graham, and I'm assuming we are, I want to know what the unreasonable repeated acts are and how they constituted bullying. Now, Sid's in number 12, and I've just put number 12 as a group. And what I've said there is that, and the reason I've done that is because we've only got 45 minutes, okay? So we don't have all time. And I would be highlighting, as I did before, unwarranted assumptions, untrustworthiness. So I'll be highlighting a lot of that, and I want a lot more information about that. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now and run through to here. So in this section, this is where you've really got to dig to get clarity around what Sid is saying. So the interview's got to become very organic. You've just got to flow with it. So ask him about, what do you mean by unwarranted assumptions? Or what do you mean by assumption? What do you mean by untrustworthiness? What do you mean unreasonable behaviour? And Sid might say, well, his unreasonable behaviour is that he's bullying me. Okay, Sid, tell me how he's bullying you. Give me examples, give me days, give me comments, give me all this sort of stuff. So all of these words, I'm going to want to really dig to understand what Sid is complaining about. What's the problem, Sid? Okay, how is Graham unprofessional? How is Graham intimidating? How is he challenging you? So this part of the interview is going to take a fair bit. There's going to be a lot of questions that you're going to ask, and you're going to be bouncing off Sid's response. And that's why I say, listen carefully, ask questions as a result of the complainant's statement. Okay, so I have on my desk, when I'm interviewing, I've got a copy of the complaint marked up. I've got a copy of my interview script, and I've got a notepad that I'm writing notes on that I'm going to come back and clarify. okay? But I really need, and this is where either Sid's complaint is going to fall apart because he's not going to be able to give me anything. He's not going to be able to give me any reason for this unwarranted assumption and untrustworthiness. Or he's going to give me lots of information which is going to support his complaint, okay? So, like I said, you can't plan every question because you don't know what the complainant's going to say. Listen to understand, not to reply, okay? Start with open questions, follow up with closed or probing questions. So, going back to our markup, as I said, we're going to spend a lot of time on section 12. And if you were doing one of my courses, that is where you would be spending a lot of time, because when you interview the complainant, you're going to want to know all of this. And in a sexual harassment complaint, there's going to be a lot of feelings. He made me feel uncomfortable. Tell me how, tell me all this sort of stuff. So that really is an important part. So we go now, last Thursday in front of other staff, he was angry and aggressive, all right? So there we have a number of things at 13, 14 and 15. And bear in mind, these numbers could be much higher than 13, 14 and 15. Okay, when was the meeting? You said last Thursday. Let's double check. What time was it at? Where was it at? Were we talking boardroom? Are we talking hallway? Are we talking car park? Who else was there? Because he said in front of other staff, all right? So it's really important that you get to in front of other staff. Who was there? Names. Definitely want names, witnesses. He said he was angry and aggressive. I want to know how that anger and aggression manifested. What made you say he was angry? If he was yelling, how loud? And remember the scale we talked about last week. If we're talking at level 4, give me a number up to 10. Words used. What were the words used? Okay, because you might be testing this evidence with witnesses. You know, Sid says he called me an idiot. So I'm asking everyone else, did you hear Graham make any comment about Sid? I won't necessarily say the word idiot to them straight away, and they might say, no, I didn't hear a word. Did you hear the word idiot used? No, I didn't. I will also ask about the RGI project because I'm going to be speaking to Graham at some point, so I'm going to want to know why he pulled him off the RGI project. So it's important just to get clarity. He mentioned the RGI project early on, so I might have got clarity then. So going back to my markup now, told me I was off the RGI2 project. I want to know about that. So 18 and 19, where he leaves the office, he glares at me and he never greets me. 19 and 20. So in my script, I'm definitely going to be asking about those. Now, when you're talking about what Graham said to Sid, I want to know, did you respond, Sid? What did you say? When he said something, what did you say? And you know, there's the comment about taking off the RGI project, and I told him it was nearly complete. Oh yeah, it's probably going to be full of mistakes. I'll have to get Angela to redo it. So I want to know who else was nearby. Did anyone else hear that? Did you respond? Did you say anything? If Sid says, yeah, I did say something, I questioned him why he was taking me off the project, then my question would be, how did he respond? Who is Angela? Did you have any conversation with Angela? Did Angela come to you? Did Angela come and say, hey, you know, that wasn't very nice. So, you know, is there any other evidence that I can gather to support Sid's comments around Graham saying he told me I was off the project because I can't seem to get anything right. All right. So again, we've established, is there anyone else around? Again, when there's comments that Graham is allegedly making to Sid, I want to know, did you respond? How did you respond? And if he said he did respond, how did Graham respond? Did anyone else come to you? Did anyone else talk to you? Did you speak to, and with Angela, did you have any conversation with Angela? So again, so if there's conversation, I want to know about the response. Now, As I said right from the start, these are my kind of dot points. But whenever someone says something, so did you respond? Yeah, I said to Graham, it's not fair. You're always picking on me. And how did Graham respond? Graham responded by saying, "Oh, look, sorry, Sid, you're just no good." What happened then? What was the outcome? Was there any further conversation? Did anyone else hear that? Did you talk to anyone? So there's a lot of questions that are going to flow on from the fact that Sid's given me some information. And that's why, and I keep on banging on about this, if you type out every question, you will be looking at your form going, right, my next question, my next question, my next question. And I've seen investigators, when I've been training them, do that. And I've sat down with them after and said, look, the reason why the witness was getting a little bit toey because you kept on asking the same question over and again that he'd already answered. So again, listen to understand what they're saying. The glaring, how often does he come out of his office and glares at you? And anything like that, I will always say, can you describe the look on Graham's face when he glared at you? The one I had where someone said that, the lady said, oh, I haven't seen it, but I felt it. So really, yeah, that's not evidence. If he said, can you describe the look on Graham's face? Yeah, it's angry. Okay, tell me why you think it's angry. What makes the face look angry? Oh, it's red. So his face is red. Now that leads me to other questions. Is his face normally red? Does his face get red? And I'd be asking other people, have you seen Graham's red face? And someone might say, yeah, Graham's always got a red face. So again, digging. Going back to our markup, number 20. And I don't think I'm alone in being bullied by Graham in the past 12 months. So from that, obviously, I want to know more about, there was a thing about greeting. Does he greet others? Who does he greet? When does he greet them? Who else do you think has been bullied? How do you know this? Who told you? What are the details? So again, more digging. Sometimes people say, oh, I mean, it's quite common for someone to say, well, look, I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure that other people have been bullied. So when I am interviewing witnesses, one of my questions to the witness will be, can you describe your relationship with Graham? And they might say, yeah, I get along really well with Graham. Tell me about Graham's management style. Tell me about Graham's communication style. Have you ever seen Graham acting inappropriately towards anyone? All those sort of questions come out of Sid's statement that he bullies other people. Okay, so obviously there's many more questions that could be asked, but that is an overview of me analysing the complaint and drafting my complainant interview. Last thing I say, or one of the second last things I say, is there anything else you'd like to tell me or anything else you'd like to say about any of the matters we've discussed? If they go yes and tell you more, listen to them. It may lead to more follow-up questions. When they finish talking, is there anything else you want to tell me? What I want to hear is, no, I've told you everything. Sometimes I'll get someone who will go, yes, I want to tell you more. Yes, I want to tell you more. And I did an interview with a guy for 4 hours. And at the end of 4 hours, I said, is there anything else you'd like to say? And he said, yes, I've got plenty more to say. And I went, oh my God. Unfortunately, all he was doing was repeating what he'd previously said. And we went on for another 2 hours. But it's their interview. If you cut them short or do stuff like that, you run the risk of complaints that your interview was unprofessional, your interview was biased. So there are times when you pray for, no, that's all. But when it comes, it comes. So anything else you'd like to tell me about any of the matters we've discussed? No, I'm good, thanks. I've told you everything I need to tell you. Okay, your final question, your final comments. This interview has been conducted in a confidential manner. You're asked not to discuss this matter with anyone involved or not involved in the matters under consideration. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. You're asked not to mention this matter on any media or social media platform during the investigation. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. Finally, you're asked not to attempt to influence anybody involved in this matter. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. Now, those 3 questions, just like the preamble questions at the start, are entirely up to you what you say. These are what I say. I do it because there's a certain level of formality around the way the questions are formed. There's a certain level of formality about the way I deliver them, and I pretty well deliver them as I've been talking today. But it does give the interviewee the distinct impression, this is a serious matter. So, we've got an external investigator. It's a serious matter. We're going to take this seriously. So, yeah, now, as the question was asked earlier, what if there's something in your policy? Sure, if there's something in your policy, then you've got to abide by what's in your policy, okay? But it's really important to make sure you understand that your interview plan needs to be as simple or as complex as you feel comfortable with, okay? So, like I said, I've been doing this for quite a while, so it's quite easy for me to go through these points. Now, this is the interview plan after the analysis of a one-page complaint. If, for example, I had a large complaint which involved multiple documents, you might see this, Doc 1, okay? And this would be my markup of the first document. If, for example, I had a number of emails, I might have EM1. And my questions following that would relate to email 1. So I might have Doc 1, there might be 20 questions. Now, this is a short one, obviously. If I'm analysing sort of 20 pages of complaints plus 20 pages of documentation associated plus 10 emails, it's going to be much longer. And at times I'll also use like tabs on the piece of paper with a number as well, okay? So that's basically how I go from analysis of the complaint through to my investigation or my interview. I call it my interview script. And what I do is I type out, obviously I don't type out the preamble. I change that for witnesses, I change that for respondents. And for example, if I'm talking to the respondent, my first question would be, how well do you know Sid Arbour? Just tell him about your relationship with Sid, okay? So in here, because Graham's a manager, there's probably going to be questions about, tell me about Graham's management style, tell me about Graham's communication style, all that sort of stuff as well. So there might be some other stuff that I add in there that's not necessarily in the complaint. And it's my interview, so I can put in as much as I want. But I personally try to interview relatively lean. I don't go into a lot of chit chat, especially not on the record, for a number of reasons. One, my client's paying for the transcript. So if I spend half an hour talking to the interviewee, just random thoughts, my client's paying for that, so I don't do that. And I am there to conduct the interview, the facts, to get the facts and all that sort of stuff. When I conclude the interview at the end, it will be interview concluded at 5:15 p.m. I'll finish off, and then we might have a chat. You might ask me, okay, what happens next? So I'll tell them what happens next. Tell them that I've got to interview other people. Tell them that I've got to, whatever it might be that I'm going to do. I will generally either get their email address or I'll have their email address where I will send the transcript of the interview. The interview comes in PDF form. I tell people don't try to add into it. If you want to add more details, if we miss something, put it in an email, send it to me, and I'll consider it in the same weight that I consider our interview. We don't wait until the person signs and sends it back. We used to do that. We found we only got about 20, maybe 40% of the transcripts back, and it tended to hold up the entire process. So we don't do it anymore. We've got the audio recording. If someone asks me for the audio recording, they can have a copy of the audio recording. Occasionally, someone will object to the audio recording, and I'll generally ask them why. They might come up with some wacky reason, and I do explain to them that, look, the audio recording is the best method of capturing everything that we've talked about. Okay. All right. So that's all for me. Thanks for attending. I will stay here for a couple more minutes to answer any questions. I'm going to turn off the recording now.